Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we take source material articles, research, even personal notes, and we just pull out the most valuable insights for you.
Right. The goal is to give you that aha moment to connect the dots so you don't have to.
And today, our source is really specific. It's a single set of personal observations called Notes on Gardening, Part 744.
Sounds pretty niche, right?
It does, but these notes document this incredible botanical paradox. It's about a plant, a Cockscomb Celosia, that hit a record-breaking size.
Because the gardener completely ignored it.
Exactly. And that's our mission for this deep dive, to unpack the science behind that. How does neglect lead to success? And it all comes down to this idea of the microclimate.
And that's such a powerful concept.
Yeah.
A microclimate is, this tiny, hyper-local environmental factor. We're talking maybe a few square feet.
So small.
So small, but it can completely override all the generalized care instructions you'd ever read. It's why this story is such a perfect aha moment about nature's hidden rules.
It's nature versus nurture, really, and in this case, nature just ran away with it. Okay, so let's unpack the setting a bit. The gardener, Ang, is clearly very analytical, and the plant is a Cockscomb Celosia.
Yeah, those are the ones with that velvety, brain-like flower head. Pretty distinctive.
And Ang's attitude towards this plant is, I think, really important here.
Or absolutely. The notes say Celosia is grown only, and I'm quoting here, occasionally as a willing subject for experimentation and evaluation.
So it's a lab rat, basically.
Pretty much. Ang is not attached to this plant. In fact, they say it's not a favorite, they don't love the look, and they find it annoying that it's an annual.
And that lack of preference is so key because it means there was no, unconscious favoritism going on.
None at all. This whole thing started completely by chance. Ang notes that dormant Celosia seeds tend to pop up sporadically around the garden.
Just random volunteers.
Exactly. It's just natural, untended growth. This wasn't a deliberate planting in some perfectly prepared garden bed. A seed just landed in a random spot.
And that's where the microclimate comes in, right? Before anyone even knew it was there.
That's the moment. That randomness allowed this one seed to land in what, unbeknownst to everyone, was the absolute environmental jackpot.
So we've got this unloved, accidental flower sprouting in the front yard, but what makes it an anomaly instead of just, a weed?
That's where the numbers come in. You really have to quantify it to see the scale of what happened.
Okay, let's unpack the hard data then. What does a good celosia typically look like?
Well, with Cockscomb Celosia, the big metric for success is the main stem. It has to support that huge, heavy flower head. So a thick stem is everything.
Right.
So an impressive plant, one that might, say, win a prize at a local fair, will have a main stem that's somewhere between 1.3 and maybe 2.5 centimeters wide.
And 2.5 centimeters is already pushing it.
Oh, yeah, that's top tier. That
Yeah.
shows you've done everything right. Good genes, good care, everything.
But the plant in these notes.
This plant, the one that was ignored after it had wilted, Ang measured the main stem. It was, and the notes call it this, an astonishing 3.5 centimeters in width.
Wow. 3.5. So that's a full centimeter wider than the expected maximum.
A full centimeter.
Now, to someone who doesn't measure plant stems for a living, that might not sound like a lot. Why is 1 centimeter such a big deal?
Because that growth isn't linear. It's exponential. When you go from a 2.5 to a 3.5 centimeter stem, you're not just adding 40% more thickness.
You're adding much more volume, much more mass.
Exactly. The cross-sectional area, the amount of tissue, the structural support needed, it all increases dramatically. The root system has to support a exponentially larger structure.
So the demands on the plant's internal systems, its ability to move water and nutrients, are just off the charts.
Completely. It's operating at a metabolic level that's way beyond what you'd expect. It's not just a bigger plant. It's like a different high-performance machine. That jump from 2.5 to 3.5, that signifies a total breakthrough.
A breakthrough that, as Ang's notes make very clear, happened because of pure indifference. And that really is the core paradox, isn't it? Ang says, I hadn't managed the plant at all. I simply let it grow on its own without dedicated watering or fertilizing.
Right. The success came from the absence of management.
Which is just so counterintuitive to how we think about gardening or, well, anything, really.
It is. And what's fascinating here is that the gardener's own analysis points away from their own skill. It confirms the microclimate hypothesis. The success was attributed, quote, solely to the specific microclimate of the front yard.
So it wasn't a secret fertilizer or anything?
No. It was successful in spite of the neglect. So if it wasn't care, what was the specific mechanism? What was so special about this one tiny spot?
Ang has a theory on that, right?
Yes, and it comes down to hydrology.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the way water moved through that one little patch of ground.
Okay.
Aang suspects that spot had a high concentration of collected water.
So was the plant just sitting in a puddle? Because most plants, and I think Celosia too, they hate having wet feet.
No, great question. It's not a surface puddle. We're talking about what's happening underground, subsurface.
Ah, okay.
Imagine, like, a slight depression under the soil, or a runoff channel from the driveway that funnels water deep down, maybe a foot or two. It's a hidden, natural reservoir that gets refilled every time it rains, maybe even just from the morning dew.
And that's completely different from just coming out with a hose every day.
Completely. If we connect this to the bigger picture, when you water from the surface every day, you're actually encouraging the plant to develop shallow roots.
Because why would it dig deeper if the water is always right there at the top?
Precisely. It learns to be lazy, and those shallow roots make it vulnerable. A hot day comes, the topsoil dries out, and the plant is stressed.
Yeah.
It can't support that kind of massive 3.5 centimeters growth.
So the standard gardening effort, the thing we think is helping, might actually be limiting the plant's ultimate potential.
In this case, yes. It forces the plant to maintain a fragile infrastructure. But this microclimate, with its deep, consistent water source, it allowed for extensive root system expansion.
The plant struck oil.
It basically did. It found this reliable water source deep underground and invested a ton of energy into building a massive, resilient root engine. And that deep engine is the only reason it could support that record-breaking stem above ground.
It's a perfect example of infrastructure coming before growth. The environment built a better foundation than the gardener ever could have with a hose.
And it raises a good question, why didn't Aang, who is clearly an observant gardener, notice this spot before?
That's a great point. I mean, if it was so great, why wasn't everything growing there?
Because the advantage was invisible. The notes imply the topsoil looked normal, maybe even a little dry. The secret was hidden deep down. Aang only figured it out afterwards by process of elimination. The neglect ruled out every other cause.
The result was so extreme it forced them to look for an equally extreme explanation.
Exactly. Accidental science at its best.
So, okay, let's bring this back to the core lesson. For anyone listening, whether you're a gardener or managing a team or whatever, what do we take from this?
I think the biggest lesson is that an unmanaged but optimal environment can produce wildly better results than a heavily managed but generic one.
It shifts your focus, doesn't it?
It completely shifts it. If we connect this to the bigger picture, we always think about what we can add: more resources, more effort, more fertilizer.
Right, more inputs.
Yes. But the Celosia story shows that the most powerful factor for extreme success might be finding and leveraging what the environment already provides. It's about finding that one point of maximum leverage.
We spend so much time trying to make the environment fit our plan instead of making our plan fit the environment.
That's it, exactly. We're managing based on a general rule book when we should be optimizing based on hyperlocal data.
The second Aang stopped imposing those rules, the watering, the fertilizing the plant was free to just max out its potential in the perfect environment it happened to find.
The only successful strategy, in this case, was to get out of the way. It really makes you wonder, how many other things are underperforming because they're stuck in a routine that's preventing them from accessing some deep natural advantage.
It really questions our whole idea of what control even means. The best outcome here came from giving up control because the foundation, that microclimate, was already perfect.
The Celosia was the ultimate outlier, and it proved the rule that a deep, strong foundation trumps any amount of superficial effort. Every time.
So what does this all mean? When we boil it all down, this deep dive into Aang's notes, it really shows that success is often less about what you add on top.
Yeah, less about the visible stuff, the fertilizer, the watering can.
And much more about understanding and capitalizing on what the local environment is already providing, sometimes deep beneath the surface. You have to be an observer first, a manager second.
And that leads us to a final, provocative thought for you to take away. If the biggest Celosia we know of was grown by accident, through pure neglect in a perfect little hydrological sweet spot, what does that say about everything else?
What do you mean?
I mean, what untapped potential exists in other plants, even major agricultural crops? What if we're imposing limits on them because we've never found their exact perfect microclimate?
So the way we do large-scale farming with these huge uniform fields, that might actually be preventing us from seeing the true potential of the crops we depend on.
It's possible. The world is just full of these hidden, hyperlocal advantages. And if you want to find the next big breakthrough, the next anomaly, maybe you should start by looking really closely at the places everyone else ignores.
Because that's where unexpected perfection might be hiding.